catchphrase, by the way.
By the way, we need a catchphrase.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Thanks for
Yeah,
listening.
that's what I just said. Thanks for listening.
Eric is awesome. You wish you could be more like him.
Eric is awesome. You wish you could be more like him.
Thanks, Keegan. Speaking of which, that's called a segue. Not a good one because we're dumb comic creators.
We need a catchphrase.
We do need a catchphrase.
I got to start this week.
We also need to introduce our
I'm gonna edit it from where I said it.
No, I'm fine.
And you agreed with me.
And I'm just gonna simply spend the entire time just saying we need a catchphrase halfway through this, so you have trouble remembering where you're supposed to edit it.
This podcast will be 5 minutes long because you'll say this at the very end. I already know. And then I'll get confused.
We need a catchphrase.
All right. It's getting shorter as we go.
Okay, cool.
It's a paradox.
Apologies to our guest, Daniel Welch.
It's okay.
And we're done. Bye.
Great show, guys. All right, but anyways, we are, as you could just get through that great introduction, dumb comic creators. I am Eric Schwartz, accompanied by
Keegan Shiner.
That is your name indeed. I agree.
I'm glad I have your approval.
You do. I approve your name.
Thanks. Are you running for office of the name board?
I am. I'm the primary right now.
We need to shake this out. This is just so awkward right now. It's forced, Eric. It's become forced.
What? The introduction?
If we came up with a catchphrase, I feel like we wouldn't be forcing this so much.
This isn't a forced thing. An actual question that I ask every time, and I always get the same answer that you don't have one.
Well, how come I have to be in charge of everything?
It's just a suggestion. Like if you suggested, hey Eric, maybe you should think of a catchphrase, I'll do it. But I have said that.
I've said
and
that.
And I haven't thought of one yet. So that's why I keep on saying it. It's my way of saying I have failed you, and it's my way of apologizing for failing.
And if this is your first time listening to this podcast, that's our version of Previously On. So today we have a wonderful indie comic artist. He's about to print a comic that he's been working on for several years. His name is Daniel Welch.
Hello.
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
Welch? Mm-hmm. Is it Welch? Like Welch's
like grape juice.
Like the grape juice.
First time I've heard that actually. So.
Is it Daniel like Daniel Boone?
Or Daniel Radcliffe, the famous British actor?
I prefer Daniel Clowes, but hey.
Daniel who?
Clowes?
Clouds?
Oh, he made that comic Ghost World. Sorry.
Oh yeah, Ghost World, the movie.
Yeah. Hey,
Oh,
that's a movie. Daniel Radcliffe is in a movie.
Yeah. Daniel Boone could have been in a movie. Who knows?
Who's Daniel Boone?
Daniel Boone. He was one of the guys at the Alamo.
Yeah.
He was like a famous one of those
Cowboys?
Trappers. Actually, he wasn't a cowboy. He was a trapper. They caught small animals for their fur and stuff, and then.
Good for him. He's like Davy Crockett.
Yeah.
They were friends.
They died together.
Right. Yep. They died together.
In each other's arms.
They were holding.
Maybe.
A little known Alamo fact.
You can watch several movies about that, actually. Mm-hmm. They're all historically inaccurate. So, Daniel, I think what we wanted to talk about were comics. And so let's...
Hey, Keegan, that kind of feels forced right there.
It did feel forced. It did. So how did you start making comics?
I made like some comics as like a kid, I guess. But mostly I started my last semester of college. I took a comics course at the Museum School of Fine Arts in Boston, and just decided that I had wasted the past 4 years, and that's what I was going to do now.
Interesting.
Yeah,
What was it about the
and,
class that really like made you want to stick with it?
I guess mostly it was just an excuse, I think, to like finally, because I'd been reading and keeping up with comics for like years, and then like I'd never even like really tried to make one as like an adult or semi-adult, and then actually having like the materials in hand and like some basic principles, I was like, oh, this is pretty doable and fun. I don't know.
Cool. And you said that you were, before we started recording, so that nobody gets confused, you said that you were a film major and an English minor. So,
But reverse, but you know, who's
yeah.
counting?
Sorry, that's what I was. And you were the English major?
Right. Yeah.
English major. Okay.
And
Yeah.
film minor.
Yep.
Did you do a lot of creative writing and storytelling through that, or?
I did a little bit outside of class, but in both cases, it was mostly just like criticism, like reading and essays and stuff.
So it wasn't necessarily that you were making films or making short stories and then kind of like got into the medium because it was a hybrid. It was actually that you were into comics and wanted to start making comics.
Pretty much. I'd written a little bit of like short prose or whatever, but it was always like that itself was always kind of disjointed and like sort of non-linear in a way that I feel like works a lot better for comics.
Mm-hmm.
So it started eventually, like all that started to make a little bit more sense than writing in just words.
I see. Cool. So what do you have any influences on your comics before we start looking at a specific one?
Last night I was reading the new Gabrielle Bell book. She's like just one of the indie cartoonists that I feel like has always really stuck for me. And it's somewhere between her and like Frank Miller was one of the first comic artists I got really into. And I think like recently I've been revisiting some of that stuff and like been respecting it in a pretty different way a lot more. I don't know, Chris Ware, I don't like.
Okay.
One of the big ones.
Cool. Yeah, those are pretty big names actually.
Right.
Yeah. That's good because everyone can kind of look those up.
And it's not like there's a tiny amount or a select niche for them, so there's plenty to go around.
Right.
Yeah, that made no sense. I'm sorry.
Thanks for thanks for contributing.
Also, I'm just reading your comics. I know a lot of them seem to have like almost be partially autobiographical nature. Is that true across the board, or is that true for select, or not true at all?
It's I think it's mostly it's true. Other than like there are a couple in that one comic couple where it's like someone I hope is like clearly not me. If it's not like yeah, but no, predominantly it's like I'll just use myself at least as like a model for the character, because I think right now I still feel kind of nervous about drawing other people. Like there is a really good quote by that cartoonist Daniel Clowes where he's just talking about how like rude it is to draw someone else, and how what kind of like a horrible violent thing to do to someone is to like show them what you think they look like.
Interesting.
So I'm still like, this first one that you guys are looking at, like that's me. That's something that happened to me.
Oh yeah, this is couple. Let's go back
Right.
to that. What made you connect to that quote about drawing other people?
I mean, I feel like whenever I read about people talking about comics, like the thing I really relate to most is when people are talking about how like drawing is a way of expressing a worldview in a more direct way than like just words or just like in cinema or something. Like it's, you can kind of like see how someone perceives how people move by the way they draw them moving. But so if you're just drawing yourself, like then it's like a reflection, and that's, you're the only real like victim of that. But if you're drawing like a stranger or someone who's like really close to you, it's sort of like, I feel like it's sort of like when you tell someone that someone else looks like them, that person's always going to seem way uglier if you're the person that's hearing that. And I feel like perhaps on a deeper level, if you're drawing someone and you're just saying like, you look like this to me, I feel like that's always going to feel like, unless it's like a, you know, very painterly, like beautiful, idealized portrait, which I'm personally not capable of drawing. Just like my skill level's not there.
No offense.
And
Nope. No offense.
Right?
I believe in you.
Maybe someday, maybe. But, so it's, I don't know, it's also like kind of embarrassing to like try and draw someone and then like have them see that, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, for now, some of the stuff I write, it's stuff that never happened to me, but it's just like easier to
You didn't spend
operate
years
from
in
that
jail?
sort of.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So there's a part of this where, is that in Couple? By
That's
the
a
way?
couple.
Yeah. Where his friend goes to what jail? It's what's it called? Jail.
It's something with
It's
a T.
torrenting,
Torrenting jail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Well, this one's funny because parts of, like, it's supposed to be two characters that aren't me at all, but I did get caught by my parents once torrenting a bunch of I think it was like then the newest like Kendrick Lamar album and like a bunch of other like they actually did get a letter from like the charter cable company about
Really?
how,
Oh wow, really?
yeah,
Because
but nothing happened.
we definitely torrented back
I
in the
torrented
day.
stuff. I still torrent stuff. So,
But it was before they could really track it. Because
Right.
we went to college right around the time that they started tracking. And I think Purdue had like an intranet, which was eventually shut down. But the intranet was like their own version of Napster, had like literally everything.
Wow.
my school literally made just, they just said like, here's free Napster, and they'll cover the costs.
Yeah.
So we ended up paying nothing
Really?
for Napster. Yep.
Yeah.
Sick.
But that was the Wild West of the internet before, when the web was still a web and not just a tangled mess of corporate shells. Right. Yeah.
It was, at the time, it was kind of like, you're going to send me a letter to tell me to stop pirating music on the internet? Like,
yeah.
How are you going to use an analog format to tell me to not do something digital?
It's so stupid.
You're really flexing on me. But
could they tell from the links that you were going to? I'm sorry to go off topic, but I'm interested to know. Did they know the files, or did they just know that you were torrenting?
They knew the files, yeah. They somehow knew exactly what I downloaded. I think it was just like seeding it for too long. And I also think it was like an album that had just come out, so probably like the record label was like putting more pressure to monitor that stuff or something. I don't know.
Maybe they like leaked it to see who was downloading it. Like they put a tracker in the code or something.
It's possible.
Did your parents yell at you and start laughing?
They didn't start laughing. So that was a bit of a rewrite of or that's one thing about creating a fictional character, I guess, is you can sort of rewrite the traumatic moments.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, this was an interesting part of the comic. If we can get into this a little bit, you had a lot of prose in this comic, which is unusual for a comic. What was that? How did you come to that choice?
I think it was just like I for the whole thing I came up with the title first. I actually was just like drawing one night and like wrote that on a sheet of paper and then like posted it on my Instagram story or whatever, and then like a bunch of people kept asking me like what that was, and so I just like wrote every one of these paragraphs, I guess, because then the text-based part of the narrative is broken up into paragraphs. Like I just wrote on a post-it note, like put it in my notebook, and then I was gonna figure out like how to reorder them and like then what to draw.
Oh, weird.
And
So
eventually
they
I
weren't
realized
connected at all? They weren't connected?
they were, but I wasn't sure. Like it was like a loose order. Like I
Oh,
think
okay.
I still had to figure out like narratively like what stuff should go when. But I was gonna figure out what to draw later, and then I realized that the text parts were way too long. So then I thought I would do like the images facing the text, and like sort of convince myself that that was like torrenting works by like downloading like disparate parts of a file, and like I
Yeah.
thought maybe that would reflect the format would reflect that somehow. I'm still like
It actually
I don't
it
know.
felt pretty almost like flashing between a news story and then like kind of what's going on in the jail, I guess. Does that Eric, what do you think?
I thought like that was like literally was like I thought that was him imagining the TV show. Like I didn't take that to be
Oh well.
reality because I thought it was like his friend just went to jail or his boyfriend or whoever his relationship was to him to Asa just went to jail. Obviously that'd be on his mind. So that's what I saw it as.
Oh, interesting.
Like the images are like a TV show, and the text is actually like a monologue. Or
That's weird, Eric. That's wrong.
Hey! Art is subjective.
Okay.
My opinion,
I
but
could, yeah, I could see it.
I
You know,
assume,
oh, sorry.
I assume my opinion is bad. And I should feel bad, in the words of Zoidberg.
Yeah. Actually, I'm reading Diary of a Teenage Girl right now. Have you ever read that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Have you ever?
I've read some of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of it's so weird. But this reminded me of that in like almost it's like a parody, sort of.
That's I wrote it before I started reading that, and I'm realizing now I'm such a hypocrite because I opened up Diary of a Teenage Girl and read like 30 pages or something, and then I was like, I didn't sign up to read a book. Like I wanted, and now looking at this on the screen right now, I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I did.
I was like, hey, this
But
guy's gonna make me read.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's very similar to that.
you're right.
And if you haven't read that book, the book is like a novel, and the character in the book is a comic artist. And as she develops as a comic artist, there's more and more comics in the book, kind of flashing between comics that the character is drawing, and then also comics of like real life events that the character is going through. And also to point out, that book is complete fiction. And
Really?
yeah, it's complete fiction. So
Oh man.
in that way, I think it's a pretty cool book. It's weird
I'd
subject
read other
matter.
right, right. A lot of it's very icky. A lot
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
Um, I've seen her comics elsewhere in like anthologies and stuff, and I've liked them. But
Oh, cool. It's not usually prose then, right? Or is it?
most of the stuff I've seen, but it's also like those are like comics anthologies, so like I think
Oh, yeah, they're for
they
comics. Yeah.
right.
Well, I would guess that it's not usually like a diary because that's just what the book called for.
Right.
I don't know, but it surprised me. I ordered it and it came, and I was like, "This is not a comic," but it's on all the top graphic novels of the 2020, decade, and it's like the top comic of the last 20 years. So
Right.
you got to try it. You know.
I have to, my friend's moving away and I have her copy. I have to give it, she's moving tomorrow. I have to give it to her tomorrow. So maybe.
Oh, wow. Well, she won't hear. This won't be out till next week, so
That's
it'll be
true,
too
yeah.
late if you forget
Let's-
by then. So you'll be
Yeah.
fine.
So if
Right.
if you
Yeah.
forget, she won't know until next week. Yeah.
I'll like read the cliff notes or something.
Cool. So how did you come up with the concept for couple? Just backtracking a little bit.
Sure. Mostly some of these I made like a super long time ago. Like I said at the beginning, like some of it's from when I was living in Boston, some's from New York. So they were mostly made pretty independently. And I realized after a while I just like need to just put something together, because I think printing and having like a physical presence for your comics is like kind of a crucial part of it. But I didn't have anything for a long while, and so I looked through what I had and like other ideas that I hadn't drawn yet, and kind of like figured that some of it worked in conjunction with each other. I came up with this idea that I regret a little bit now, of calling them all like romance comics when a lot of them aren't, and like some of them are about like one of them is about my mom talking to me, which it's weird in retrospect to label it that, but I was like really
Oedipus complex. Sorry.
maybe. I hope not. But it's like it's her talking to me about my brother, and like not really any of it's romantic at all. But
Oh, that's
I think I
right.
was just,
Yeah. Your mother is kind of a jerk in that comic.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yes, she is. Oh,
Oh,
I'm gonna spoil
I really
it. Can
didn't
I
mean it
spoil
that
it?
way.
It's really
Yeah,
funny.
please.
Yeah, your mother's like, everyone has a way that their brain works. Some people have highways, some people have country roads. Your brother has a super highway and you don't.
Oh man. I feel so bad because I thought it was the comics about, maybe I was a little too like subtle about it, but like it's her. I have this really vivid memory of like my brother is on the autistic spectrum, and like of her coming into my room and trying to explain that to me as a little kid.
Oh,
Oh,
But
I interpreted this very wrong then.
well, she did too, because I showed this comic to her and she was like, she started crying, and I was like, what's wrong? Like
well,
I thought it was more about like me being like a narcissistic little kid and being like, oh, he has that neurodivergence. I want that too.
no, it makes you sound like I'm smart. And she's
Damn.
like, no, you're not.
He's the smart one. No, I
Right.
actually interpreted that he was he was on drugs, like because he's a super highway. I'm like,
Damn.
oh god, he's on drugs.
Whoa.
Because you kept on talking about the word highway. I'm like, what? Is this like subtly trying to say drugs?
It's a
I
little
am-
kid, Eric. Why?
I
would
know it doesn't. That's what I mean. I'm over 2 in my interpretations today.
Right. My brother's in an MK Ultra. Yeah, that okay. I'll have to think about that a little bit.
Let's talk about the art a little bit, because it's kind of, I don't mean to be. I'm not trying to be rude, but it's all over the place in terms of
Sure, yeah.
form. Are these intentional choices, or are you kind of like piecing together different days? I'm just leading a little bit, but so this comic has very broad strokes, and this comic has like detailed pen lines, for example. Just the actual art style is different.
Yeah. I think I was like, this comic covers like basically the first 2 years of me trying to make comics and figure out my voice or whatever. So it is all over the place, and I was all over the place, just trying to figure out like what I wanted, how I wanted to draw. The torrenting one that's the last one I made. That was like, it was holding me up forever because I realized I needed it to be super detailed.
I see.
If I was going to have like a whole page of just images and a whole page of just text, like then the images I felt like needed to be like as rich.
That's so interesting.
You know?
Because the torrenting one is the one I come to the most, because it's the like, maybe because it's the most cohesive and like connected and well written, well drawn piece. Not that the rest isn't. It's just
It's the one that's the most like with its most like classically structured of all of them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and there's a lot more
agree.
content here, I think, because you wrote it out.
Right.
Cool.
I like redrew these panels so many times. It's painful to look at now because I have some of the scraps of like old pages here, and
there's a lot of pen strokes, right? Like,
right.
So this must have taken a long time to draw.
Yeah, I would basically like for months I would like just come home after work, drink like a 6-pack, and like just draw line after line like until 5 a.m.
Wow.
Which I don't particularly want to go back to, but looking at it now again, I'm pretty satisfied with it.
Oh yeah, it looks fantastic.
Thank you.
And if you're listening along, it's all kind of like lots of lines, lots of line drawing. It's all pen. Is this pen or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like all like micron.
Micron. Okay. What kind of paper do you use?
I've stopped doing this since, but at the time I would basically draw on like do pencils on a piece of graph paper, and then put a piece of like transparent like vellum paper over it.
Oh.
Or tracing paper, and then do the pens on that.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Works.
Yeah, it works. I'm gonna pull up a different comic here. So what? Most of your comics are black and white, or all of them are black and white, basically. Is there? Yeah. Is that a choice too?
Kind of. I just mostly like. It's partly just like laziness. I don't know, because I don't know anything about like color theory really, or like doing it digitally I guess would be easy enough, but just like separating the layers is like so much work. And up until recently I've been pretty like pressed for time, so black and white's been a lot easier and just more immediate and fun. Plus, like, I do like a lot of the like 90s like black and white Boone comics or whatever. And that's like what I look to a lot. So
also, when you said that your favorite comic book artist one that did Ghost World, that made perfect sense to me, because black and white and black and white.
Right. Yeah, he's like the king of that.
So this comic is the Escape from Bupropion.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
It's bupropion.
Bupropion.
What is that?
For a while I hadn't. It's a like It's an antidepressant drug that
Okay.
instead of it's not an SSRI. I like I'm so dumb about this stuff. It like most antidepressants target serotonin levels, but I was taking bupropion for a while because my doctor was like, this is for if you're like not, this is dopamine. This just is like kind of the, it's just, you're just getting more dopamine. It's just for when you're like a little down.
Oh.
Like, but that's just what I was taking. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I was taking it for a while and like knew basically nothing about it, which is dumb, but
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this comic's really interesting. You go into at the end. Do you mind if I show the end? Are these
no, please.
spoilers or
Spoiler for everyone listening.
you kind of attack yourself at the end, which
Right.
I thought was really Fight Club of you.
Ooh, interesting.
Also, was the story about the Italian waitress true? Is that also autobiographical, or that just something?
That's true. All those memories at the end are all real.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Again, like this, I thought was like because this very much seemed like a very real story that a person could have. So that's why I thought it was autobiographical as well.
Part of it. It started as like at the beginning it very much was, and then by the end it wasn't.
Well,
Susan Messing, who's a person you probably never heard of, she's one of the top improvisers in Chicago. Her way of describing all acting is you take a certain aspect of yourself and you push that up and you pull other parts down to make it like a different character. And that's just what I saw you were doing in your writing, was that you would push up certain parts of yourself for the story and write about and follow that thread. It's just how I personally saw it, especially in this one.
Totally. Yeah, I buy that. For sure. It was like this comic started off like it was me because the part of the beginning about me losing my bottle of antidepressant drugs in my room is true. And then I lost it, and then like a month later I was having like just like a shitty week. And I was like, oh, it's because I just have been too lazy to get this prescription refilled. And now it's like, now I'm mentally ill again. But then it just turned out to be like a bad week, but I was already like in the middle of drawing this comic. So it's like, I guess I'll just run with like whatever feelings I was having then.
interesting.
It's like, which ultimately ends with me deliberately, spoiler alert, getting Captain America to murder me. So
You also killed Iron Man first too, so
right, I really wanted to do that. I was pretty stoked to do that.
not a big fan of Iron Man, or just always a dream of yours.
I just have a very ambivalent relationship with the Marvel properties, I guess. I don't know, because that's like was what I started out reading, and I don't. All the movies now make me a little like, just how enormous they are and like how much money they're making. Just something about it.
Success.
Yeah. Right.
How
Right.
brag much? You're making a bunch of money and spending a bunch too.
Right.
Artists doing things that people like. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I do think it's a little bit cookie cutter to your point, and it's like very plastic and commercialized, right? It's not very human in some ways.
They're not trying out anything new.
The Joss Whedon banter is not a realistic way of speaking for anyone. Nobody says that,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel bad that you don't have friends like that. And then you just feel bad. Thanks, Spider-Man.
Yeah. Right.
Cool. I want to talk about this scene really fast. So you're kind of attacking your former self like the screwed up version of you. Is that? Am I reading that right?
I don't know, they're both basically me. Like there's a line where they encounter each other, and one is basically from like
The past.
a month, the past,
Oh.
but like by a month or two.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow,
So
you
it's
grew.
effectively the same person. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
I wasn't
see.
sure if that carried, but there's a line where he's like, wait, he's the one that lost that my pill bottle and lost like my all this stuff. Like it's his fault. And I can tell because that was all that happened before I got my hair bleached, and my hair is bleached now and his hair isn't.
Right, which made me think that years had passed, but because
Oh no,
most people don't bleach their
couldn't
hair
be more clear.
and then just see a former version of themselves that they want to kill.
Yeah.
So
I just took it
Right.
as the Scott Pilgrim versus the World, where you're facing like the dark self of yourself. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. The main character's blonde. You're facing the dark self, the version that you hated, dark hair.
Yeah.
So I took it much more
I
like
love
fairy tale-ish.
that's definitely in there. I like love those books a lot.
Did-
And I think sorry.
I was going to ask, did you actually bleach your hair?
Yeah, last October I wanted to be Lou Reed for Halloween, specifically in this one interview where he has like buzzed and bleached hair. So I did that.
Cool.
But obviously it's for the listeners at home, they can tell it's gone now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the Scott Pilgrim thing is definitely in there. It's like this whole comic was me, and I have a quote on the back that kind of communicates this, I think, but like it's just me trying to like take all these very disparate influences in comics. Like there's some scenes where it's like a very Frank Miller-esque internal monologue, and like obviously the Avengers are in it. I think that Scott Pilgrim reference carries, and like, but also all these like sort of mental health comics or like diary comics. And I try to read everything. So
I think it's a good portrait of like sort of the male psyche, you know, like
yeah,
like at least comic book author psyche. Like you're trying to deal with like those tropes, right? That
yeah, definitely.
yeah, and then also like being a hero in your own comic and
Right.
yeah. So I like that a lot. I thought that was really smart.
There's that part where I don't want to like just keep glorifying my own comic, but yeah, you're right, definitely.
Yeah, this is where we talk about your comic, so it's okay.
I guess that's true, yeah. Well, there's a part where like I was thinking about like all these sort of like pervy underground comics guys like Crumb,
Yeah.
or like you got your Joe Matt or your Chester Brown, and like how they like obsessively like document these like horrible thoughts that they're having. And so I wanted to do something like that, but like have the thought be a lot more innocent, like just waiting in line at a movie theater and you notice that the box office person is like smiling, and you're like, ooh, it'd be nice if like she smiled at me, but also like recognizing that there's a whole discourse around like women demanding that women smile and whatever.
Oh yeah.
So it's like
oh yeah.
this sort of self-lacerating thing over something that's like not even like my character like didn't do or say anything about that at all.
Right, and
it's
of
like,
course the setup is there, right? I wonder if she'll smile at me, and like you're kind of like creepy looking in that frame, and
right,
and then you don't pay it off. Like there's no payoff. She doesn't even appear in the rest of the page.
right.
She's just completely off. Yeah, I like that a lot. Cool. Let's go on one more. You have another one here.
Do you have any? While we're talking about, do you have anyone that's like a personal favorite? I know that's like asking which of your kids is a favorite, but
Um, I mean, I like the new one. I think that was kind of a breakthrough in terms of like how I want to draw.
Which
'Cause
one's
one
that?
was a lot more fun.
That's couple, right?
The new one is the bupropion one.
Oh, that's
Okay.
oh yeah, okay. Okay. That's the one we were just talking about.
yeah.
Right. Because that one was just like, couple was very like I said, it took a lot of time and it was like kind of torturous for a lot of it. Because I thought I had to draw in a certain way, and then drawing the bupropion one was like actually a lot more fun and a lot easier to do in terms of like portability. Like I was doing it on like a little like notebook card or note card booklet.
I also personally saw bupropion as like of all three, like the biggest window to your soul. Like I really saw this character, like everything that he was going through, everything he thought, all his regrets, all he was trying to do.
And having said that, it is also the most like the pages don't change style, and it, you know, everything kind of looks similar, which is easier for a reader to kind of follow.
Yeah.
It's more traditional, I guess, is professional, as Eric might say.
It's a lot more cartoony. Like the other one, it felt like I was drawing, but this one, it's more like I think there is a difference between that and like actually cartooning and like trying to implement like a visual language. So I think this one was important to me.
Is this the
I
one
might make a sequel.
Are you going to be publishing this?
Yeah, I just bought a risograph printer actually.
Oh, cool.
This isn't like particularly, like it's just gonna kind of operate as like a basic printer, but I'll be able to make a lot of copies of this.
Wow.
And just mail them out or something.
That's cool. So explain what that is for our listeners.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I know what that is, but
right.
Yeah.
I also I keep doing this. I guess it's technically pronounced risograph for the nerds, but
hey, where are you from originally?
Me? I'm from Connecticut, a town called Trumbull.
Okay. All right. I was just seeing if that was a Midwest risograph, you know, risograph.
Oh, yeah, I could see. It's confusing because it's like rice-based ink, so you'd think it's rice. I don't know. It's stupid. But it's like a form of printing where it basically is like a huge copy machine, and there's like a drum on the inside that it's like kind of midway between like a laser printer and a screen printing process, where like you scan something in like you would on a copy machine. It creates a master on a piece of like rice paper or whatever, and then once that master is created, you can like shoot off a bunch of copies of that one page in like rapid succession. Like much in the way you like screen print a t-shirt or whatever based off of like one master.
And can't you kind of like play with the colors too? Like, isn't it 4-color?
It's popular now because it looks great in color. However, I have just a black ink drum.
You have no color. So, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was probably an offensive question.
Someday
I was offended.
Yeah, please. But it's fun. It's a lot more like requires a lot more physical effort and attention than, because I was also thinking about getting a laser printer, but it's a lot more fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? It also takes up a ton of room in my living room, so we'll see how long it lasts. But
cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about distribution and marketing, like your
your process. It'll be a short conversation.
Well, have you been in any zines? Have you submitted to any what kind of stuff do you look at doing after you complete your comics?
One thing that's been super encouraging is like I've been submitting pretty regularly to the last few issues of there's this anthology zine in Vancouver called Swamp Cone. And there's usually some pretty cool stuff in that, and like they have like open submissions for like pretty much anyone. And so I've gotten into the past 3 issues, and then last issue, me and my roommate were both in it, which is felt pretty good.
That's cool.
So that, but I think that is, I think, the only place I've had my work published. Yeah.
Is that Swamp Cone magazine?
Yeah.
Oh wow, their website is expired. I was trying to pull it up, but
Wait, really?
yeah.
They like just got it back up again.
Oh yeah, it's not working right now.
That sucks. Because their store was down for a while too. So everyone kept asking me like, where can I get an issue? I was like, well, I don't really know.
Yeah, it says expired. Yeah, but their Facebook page is up, so you can go to @SwampConeMag on Facebook and check it out. Out of Vancouver, so that's cool. Any other zines or anything?
Nah.
Now you said that you were applying to the Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo.
Yeah.
Have you been to that before?
This year? Yeah, I volunteered at it one year. It's a pretty good festival. I've like found a lot of like really good new stuff from them. And they have like, I feel like it's a pretty low key indie comics special. What the conventions are. But they have like really good speakers. Like I think they got like Jaime Hernandez last year, and like Michael DeForge talked. I saw him talk.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it's a cool. I would have tried to table there this year, but this is going to be the big year where it's like I finally have enough physical media to justify tabling at conventions, and then they all got canceled.
No
obviously.
conventions. Yeah.
Right.
Well, you can save the paper, I guess.
Right.
Are you friends with any other comic creators? Like, do you share your work with other people before you?
Kind of. I got my roommate and very dear friend Jimmy to start making comics, basically, so that now I have a comics. I created a comics friend, or bugged a friend into becoming a comics friend. And I know like a couple people, and I know people who like to make comics, but it's not like their main thing. But generally, like, not a ton. I wish more.
Okay.
I'm trying to collaborate with this other friend of mine, but
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, that can be hard.
Do you like collaborating, or do you prefer working on your own?
I think like I have some friends that I'm like, we can really bounce some good ideas off each other, and it would be nice to not have to like draw everything I write or write everything I draw, you know. For a while, me and my roommate were like, whenever we'd be riding the train together, like either like he'd like write like a really short poem on his iPhone and then like in the notes app, and then I would like draw like a weird face or something, so we'd kind of make comics that way.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
And that was always pretty fun.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, that would be a fun, like I would read that probably. That's pretty cool.
It was, I like that.
Daniel or Dan. Is it Dan or Daniel? It doesn't matter.
Fine.
It's either.
Yeah, people just choose. I don't really care.
Mr. Welch, Thank you for coming on our podcast.
Any
Thank you,
Instagrams, Twitters, Facebooks that you'd like to plug? Websites?
My Instagram is at at fathers_puka_shells.exe. I would love it if you would follow me on Instagram. fatherspuka_shells.x. Good luck finding it, but that's me.
Fathers and Puka is Puka.
Right.
Shells and then .exe. Now does that run anything if I enter that into Instagram, or is it an actual program?
Nothing I've made.
No, it's just an Instagram page. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as I know, that's not a real program, but I've never thought to check.
Okay. And how are you gonna print this comic and distribute it soon? That'll be on your Instagram page, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I'm gonna print it at home, and then I have a Gumroad, so I'll probably put up on there. Otherwise, I'll just post about it and ask if anyone's interested in me mailing it. At this point, I'm not super interested in turning it into a lucrative thing. So it'd be cool to just have an excuse to mail something out and get the postal service some money. But
if it ever reaches anyone after you mail it.
Right. It sucks right now. There are no stores open to really do consignment stuff with. It's tough out here, but do it for the love.
Exactly. Well, you've been a lovely guest. We've loved having you.
Why, thank you. You've been delightful hosts.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for lying about that, but thanks.
No.
We hope to see your next project, your next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll find that when we do that program. We'll see the next project, actually, the .exe.
Right, yeah.
It links his next program and it links his next project. So
fatherspuka_shells.exe.
That's me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Okay. So for those who just joining us, we just had a great interview with Daniel Welch, like the grape juice. And now we're going to play What's That Color with Keegan Shiner.
What's that color?
What's that color?
Okay. Come on down.
Come on down.
Is there a theme song? Okay, I think that was very close to being copyright infringement.
That's why I ended with the nah. Totally different.
Totally different. All right.
Also, isn't that song in public domain, though?
I don't think so.
Oh, crap.
Isn't that Stars and Stripes Forever? I don't even know what song it is.
I think Stars and Stripes in the public domain, so I think we're fine.
It's John Philip Sousa. It's copyrighted.
1 second.
No, don't look this up.
I'm killing this now.
Okay, while you look that up, I'm going to start talking about the color.
Yes, it is in the public domain.
Okay. All right, I'm eating my words. All right, I take it back. I'm sorry.
Right.
You were right. I was wrong.
I take apologies in the form of verbal or written. Sometimes it's a dance.
I just said I'm sorry.
Perfect. See? Verbal.
Okay. All right. So this week we're talking about. So we published Death Maze #1 a couple weeks ago,
which we all know every single listener has read 3 times and keeps it underneath their pillow for good luck.
Yeah, the analytics support that, I think.
Yeah, it does. It's 100% true. If you keep that comic underneath your pillow, 5 days from now, you will be visited by the Secretary of State in dream form.
Who's our Secretary in State right now?
I think Mike Pompeo.
Pompeo?
Yeah, Pompeo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's scary.
That we don't know who the Secretary of State is.
We want people to read my comic, not
Oh, okay.
not
The
get creeped out.
the former Secretary of State, Martin Van Buren, also a president, will visit you in dream form.
Still kind of scary. He had those huge mutton chops, I think. Didn't he have like that big bushy?
He had big mutton chops. Okay. First ever Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson.
Ooh, he's been canceled this year.
He's been canceled here. All right.
Yeah, he's done.
Okay. Henry Clay never became president, but was Secretary of State for the corrupt bargain. We'll visit you in dream form.
I think Henry Clay is actually probably a pretty good person.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go with Henry Clay.
Yeah, he would probably be pretty practical.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I've been trying to talk about color.
Well, we got segued by Henry Clay.
Yeah, we did.
What's your opinion on Henry Clay?
I don't care. So I published Death Maze #1.
Mm-hmm.
These are 2-page comics. They're not. You wouldn't think that they take this long and be this hard to produce, but they are, and they do. So, so after writing Death Maze 1, I wrote 6 more Death Mazes, and now for this podcast, I'm kind of going through the process so that our listeners can kind of follow along with their production. So Death Maze 1, I had, if you haven't read it yet, you can go on our website, find it, and you'll see that I had 3 different colorists kind of work on that comic and before I chose one. And the 3 versions are in that comic PDF that you can read online. So for Death Maze #2, I wanted to talk about coloring your own comic because a lot of writers might be graphic designers and not comic book artists. And a lot of comic book artists don't color. They just do the pencils and inks, or they just do the pencils and no inks. So there is some room to save some money and color your own comics. If you already know Photoshop or you already know Illustrator, you can do that. So I'm going to share my screen. If you wanted to follow along with us and watch this podcast, you can do so on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/dumbcomiccreators.
Doesn't cost anything to watch it, so it's a nice added bonus.
Yeah, we just put it up there so you can follow our screen shares if you want to. So this is page 1 for Death Maze #2.
I do not see any color whatsoever.
There's no color. I just wanted to show you the black and white version before we get into it. So we have this establishing shot. We have some close-ups here of him turning into this Hulk type of character, but it's not the Hulk.
He's also doing that by punching himself in the face.
Yeah. He beats himself up in order to turn into this creature. And then he keeps himself angry by hitting himself. It's Death Maze #2 type of humor here. So you can see this can be done a couple of ways. So I wanted to start coloring this comic, and
so you were going to color it yourself, not hire someone else to do it?
That's right. For this comic, I wanted to color it myself. I had the tools. And by tools, I mean I know Photoshop, and I can follow a tutorial of how to color comics, and I know some color theory from doing graphic design, so I thought this would go really easily.
And the follow-up question is, did it go really easily?
Well, I would say that it went horribly, horribly long. It took a long time to do.
Horribly long, not wrong, but long. Horribly long.
That's right. Horribly, horribly long. and you'll see a couple of different versions here. This is version 1. Eric, describe this page.
And this one, okay, so it is very, very brightly colored. The way I look at this, I'm feeling like I'm watching the Transformers cartoons type of color scheme.
Okay.
Lots of blue, lots of red. Also, very interesting though, is in the third picture, the one where he's hulking up, the background is not colored in whatsoever, which obviously was done on purpose, and I think it's kind of an interesting choice.
It is interesting, yeah, but it's not very dynamic, and it doesn't add any energy having this be just white space. You'll notice on this page that there's a little bit of gradient on the sky, but most of this color is just flat color, which means that it's completely one color. There's no shading, there's no highlights. Another thing to note is on this version, I have lots and lots of mistakes with the coloring because I did not do the flat coloring correctly. So
also there's a lot of bleed through if you look at it. So
right. So anywhere where I use the paint can or the flood fill, which is what it's called in Affinity, there's this like little line of whatever color was there before where the pixels didn't meet and it didn't actually fill in. I also wasn't like zoomed in very close on the artwork when I was highlighting, so there's lots of overlap of the brushwork of the colors, and you just like there's everywhere you look at this page there's going to be mistakes.
So what did you learn from this first one? Like, obviously you learned you weren't happy with this, but what did you learn? Like, did you learn like how you're going to fix it going forward? Did you learn what you're going to try to do? Because obviously if you've done the disco one and coloring, you said you probably want to do it again in the future.
Well, this is version 1, right? So,
yes. So obviously we have to go to version 2 to see how you changed it.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, I think what made all of this process difficult is that the artist gave me a file that had 50 billion layers. And I'm going to zoom out so you can see. So like layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, layer 5, layer 6. And it's like all the panels are layers. And then there's within those aren't even layers. Those are just groups of layers. And within those groups, there's like 10 more layers. And so to do color on this file was really difficult. So the first thing I learned is to put the color in like one layer to make everything easier. And even on this first version, I had color on multiple layers, and it's messy and difficult. But some of that is because of the layers that the artist left me. So if possible, ask the artist if they can combine stuff down to be just lines and background or lines, panels, and panel lines and background, because this file is pretty messy, I think.
Yeah, it looks like it went through a lot of just adding more and more and more and more.
Okay, so let's look at version 2 of page 1. So this is the current version.
So this is the version you went with. So for those that can't see, the colors still say somewhat similar in that like the red of the shirt stays the same, the blue sky, but there's a lot more dynamic changes. It's also just a much more it's just better looking. I'm trying to find an artistic way of saying that.
I think it's energetic.
It's energetic. It reminds me of the night sky in a good way, in that it's not all the same darkness and the brightness. Like things are affected by the stars, or if you have a light or near yourself, you can see different things. Also, the colors seem to not bleed through and not change. There's a lot more added detail to everything. So how did you go about this one to make your life simpler? And also, was this also going through with the 50 layers that the previous one had, or were these layers combined?
So this one is also, I mean, there was really no way to get around dealing with these layers.
Mm-hmm.
And because the artist also has like these white lines, which are part of his black lines, which I don't know if that's intentional or if they were supposed to be deleted, or if he thought this would just be a black and white comic or what. But they're very annoying, and I didn't really know if I should delete them or not. And I'm sure a colorist, a professional colorist, would just deal with those in a better way than I am. But this,
did you just leave them in there? Was your ultimate decision?
yeah, pretty much I left them in there because they're motion lines, and when I did delete them, it didn't look as good. And again, I'm kind of new to this, so I didn't want to rock the boat too much from what this artist was doing. Ultimately, I think it still looks really nice, right? Like even though there's some white lines here, it looks good and the color looks good. So this time I went with most of the colors are all on one layer.
Mm-hmm.
If you see, I'm flipping it on and off, and you can see most of them are on one or two. There's one panel here where like everything I did on the color had to be in that group of layers for some reason, and that's because it was like a computer screen, and he had changed the opacity on the actual lines to be grayed out, and because it was a screen, so in order to have the color also be at a lower opacity, I had to do the color in that group of layers. Again, all of this would be solved if he had just merged all the line art.
If you had unlimited time and nothing to do it, would you prefer to be able to draw or add colors to each layer and see where that went, or you think it ultimately was better by just doing it on the one layer?
No, I think if you're doing color, it's going to be easier to do it on one layer.
Okay.
So one thing about the color here, so I'm going to turn off a couple of these and show you actually how I did it on one of these. So you show you select your rectangular selection tool, and then I'll just make a new color layer. So you select the outside of the panel that you're working on, just one panel, and then you use the flood fill and make sure that contiguous is unchecked and everything up there is set to 0 basically. And then you fill it in at a certain color. Choose any color, and then you just fill that whole layer in with that color.
I see.
Then you use the painting selection tool, and I'm just gonna do maybe just to show you. You can select the just the hat, I guess. I'll just do the hat really fast.
Okay.
And sloppily. But you just select so this is filling in a selection of the hat.
Are you purposely not zooming in because to save time?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So normally for those watching, if you're doing this not for the sake of brevity, but for the sake of perfection, zoom in and get a much more closer part to the hat.
Right. Then you can make that hat any color you want. And as long as this contiguous is not checked, when you do this selection, it'll just fill in that hat. And then as you keep doing this, you just keep going further and further in with your selection tool. And then, and again, I'm just being sloppy right now to
But so you could change that part of the hat that you want to be red. If you want to, you could change his fists and hands and shirts.
Yeah.
So it's a long process. Did you get faster at it as time went on? Obviously, you got better at it. Just for those comparing number 1 and number 2, number 1 is much better, or number 2, I mean, is much better.
Yeah. So what I got better at is I actually went and between 1 and 2, I actually I pulled out a Frank Miller comic called The Dark Knight Strikes Again,
The
like that.
sequel to the Dark Knight Returns, I believe, correct?
Yeah, and it's people hate this comic, and
They,
and they used to hate the coloring, which is by Lynn Varley, but it's the coloring is actually very modern, and most modern comics now copy this coloring, meaning that it's a lot of like gradients and dynamic, or uh, almost like the coloring is copying a noir, but with color. So I studied some of those pages, and I kind of tried to copy some of those styles that she uses in that comic.
Mhm. And it looks really good. Just like not related to this. Do you think the Dark Knight Strikes Again is a comic that should be reevaluated by people because you think it's very much under
Yeah,
appreciated
I actually think it
or
was ahead of its time.
overhated?
I think it was ahead of its time, and people thought that Frank Miller kind of dialed it in for this comic, and was like sloppy with the writing and stuff. But and especially that Lynn Varley was sloppy with the color because she used Photoshop for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and previously she had only used paints and watercolors. So they really hated the Photoshop look at the time. This was the early 2000s. Um, but if you look at any current Marvel DC book,
A current Marvel DC comic, they will never do it by paint. It's always done by Photoshop nowadays.
and they are copying the style of this comic, really.
And also, if you watch like even like every modern day Magic the Gathering card is made by Photoshop now. That's just how if you're
Wow.
making a mass media something, it's gonna be done by Photoshop. It's no longer done by hand. On like which I think is not to. I think sometimes to the detriment because I think some of the old school art was much better uh, done by hand than it was done by computer.
Yeah. I think what I learned doing this is that, well, and I noticed after I did this that a lot of comic colorists don't do the background in detail as much as I did. And I understand why. It takes a long time to do all this detail. You know?
For those who are just listening and not watching, first of all, why? Second of all, there. If you scroll back up, Keegan, if you look at the background, there's at least 5 colors. I'm counting 6. There's purple, blue, light
Every one
blue,
of these is a
dark
different,
blue,
every one
orange,
of them is a
red,
different color.
green, and like a
Yeah.
bunch. There's also a bunch of different just parts, and it's all done separated by each part, so it looks more natural, like what you would see if you went to someone's house.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like if I'm in the real world right now,
Yeah.
it's like when I was growing up as a kid, like each different part of the house had its own color because like we didn't paint like so. One
Oh,
part of the
okay.
wall would be white, one part of the wall would be black. I mean, my house is only white and black, so it didn't have as many colors,
Yeah.
but it had each individual part was that it wasn't just this house is all white, this house is all black. It's not like that.
I see. I see.
Mhm.
So you'll see on this, I still have some like detail work to do to like fix it, but I'm pretty happy with the colors, and this is my first and possibly last crack doing the colors for a comic.
How did you do? So on the very bottom page, there's a flashing. It looks like a button switch.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. How did you go about doing that one? Because that one obviously, it's not contained just within the part itself. It looks like it's a siren going off.
Sure. That is done using a gradient tool. And actually, to show you this, I'm gonna make him glow like that.
Okay.
So I'm selecting. So I have my selection tool to like select colors, certain colors, and now if I use my gradient tool, I can make him like a gradient, right? And then if I set that to be elliptical, it'll originate from an origin and kind of circle out like that. And
Is that what you did with the purple background? If you scrolled up.
sort of, yeah. So that's going from this yellow color to like pink, hot pink, and then to dark purple. You can see.
Yeah, so that one also that too. So I was also actually even referring to just because the very top left is almost black, whereas if you keep on going further down, it goes purple, more purple.
Yeah. I'm gonna here. I'll do that to this guy right now, and you can watch. So I set it to elliptical, and then I change the colors, and I'll even change these to be the same as the background, right? So it's going from yellow, and then I added a color for hot pink, and then our last color is that dark purple. Okay, but it still looks kind of weird. So you can weird as in like tiny on what I'm trying to color. So you can pull the actual gradient to change where each color affects. So now you can see it's more like the background of the page, in that the purple is on the edges and it's kind of radiating out like that.
No, that looks really, really cool.
Okay, and then also on the background, I used a paintbrush to add that splatter effect. So I went to brushes and I used I think I used like a spray brush.
So yeah, so that's a really cool effect, and it looks really, really neat. Obviously, like right now, that guy looks like he's part of the Space Force or he's powered by the cosmos.
Yeah, but that's what the background's doing, actually. Yeah. If you look at it, so
and that creates like a very like dynamic, like almost alive comic. Like you actually, like you would expect, like if this was ever animated to a cartoon, you could see that happening. Like those color schemes have it that way.
Yeah,
which is really nice.
And to be completely honest with you, a lot of these pages from Lynn Varley's The Dark Knight Strikes Again, she uses particles on those gradients a lot, and I think it adds kind of like a painterly quality to the color, and it adds that texture that you get when you're working with real medium, and at least that's what it does for me. So yeah.
Cool.
So and then I'll show you just page 2, just to kind of show you how they fit together.
Are you finished coloring page 2, or is that still a work in progress?
I think page 2 is pretty close, actually.
Okay.
To being done.
Does your coloring match? So this is volume 2, correct?
This is page 2. Yeah.
Page 2, volume 2 is what I mean. Because you said this is the second in Death Maze that you're doing, that you're working on.
Yeah, Death Maze 2.
How did you go about matching? So, not to be racist, but the same color skin of the characters from the previous, because these are the same characters, correct?
Oh, they're the same characters, but because they're different artists, I'm going with the it doesn't matter as much to me.
Okay, so you're not trying to make them match 100% because of different artists.
No, because each artist is drawing these characters differently. So yeah, no, I didn't consider that. I tried to kind of match similar, but because it's such a different character design, it seemed hard to try and match that. Also, I'm not the same colorist as Death Maze 1.
Yes.
Obviously, if I was making a full issue comic, or I was trying to make a comic with the same artist, or with 2 artists that were mimicking the same style, I would try and keep the color similar too. But in this comic especially, I didn't really care that much. This is my interpretation of the color, of how it would look.
And not related to coloring, are those people doing yoga?
Yeah, so our character, gets through this maze, but like because his weakness is being mad at, like beating himself up, he like ends up in this very relaxing environment.
And
And
it's
then
like,
he shifts back into his human form and gets eaten by pandas.
okay.
Coming soon.
There are no bubbles like to like that you're saying like you're writing like there's no words on this. Are you gonna have to color in the word bubbles when you get to them, or is there not any word bubbles here? Period.
So you're talking about the lettering.
Yeah, the lettering.
The lettering is the last step when you're making comics. So last time I had a letterer make the letters for the Death Maze one. I think next week we're going to be talking about how I tried to letter this comic myself. Maybe I'll leave that for Death Maze 3, but yeah, so the letters come last. So once the color is locked in, then the letter will go in and fix this stuff. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, so I might have spent way more time on the color than somebody you would hire to do the color, because I colored in like every little detail of the backgrounds. But that's just because that's kind of my style. That's my color style.
Also, this is your time to learn, time to grow, stuff like that.
Yeah. So, but I had a good time doing this, and I had the Photoshop skills and like the time. And I enjoyed doing this, and it's not really what you would see from other comics too much,
Yeah.
I just think, I just think it's like here they are next to each other. So I tried to match the backgrounds a little bit too, in the similar colors.
There's like purple is like a very common theme throughout.
Yeah.
Any reason why you chose purple, or you just like purple?
I chose purple, so that goes into color theory, and there's a lot of books on color theory, but kind of just to simplify really basically, my main character is orange. So orange is complementary to purple, and orange is like next to red and yellow. So, and that's why, and also clashes with green. And so there's lots of ways that colors interact with each other, but putting orange next to purple is kind of pleasant. Does that make sense? Or
That's
it
that's
makes
as
orange
good as an
pop out.
explanation on color theory as the explanation that we got about jazz was from La La Land.
Oh man.
For those listeners who don't know, Keegan also in his free time plays music, and he hates the explanation that La La Land gives about jazz because it's the most white, watered down version of jazz I think I've ever heard in my life.
It is. It's jazz. Yeah.
Also, it's not very accurate either, even too. So
it's not at all. So I just butchered color theory, and thanks for that.
you're welcome.
I was trying to think what superheroes are orange and purple, but there aren't really.
No, there's not very many orange ones. Period. I mean, there's an orange Hulk at times, but that's about it.
That comes down to like the original printing process for comics, and orange was harder to make between red and yellow. It was hard to get like a consistent orange from printer to printer, so they avoided it. They did red, they did yellow, they did blue, because those were colors they could print easily.
I just also think there's the Orange Lantern as well. That's like the only one I can think of in times that's actually orange, and he's literally Orange Lantern.
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna hang up this Zoom call and just immediately think of like 5
Also, we'll probably get a bunch of emails like listing them all. Like, you forgot this guy, you forgot this guy, you forgot this guy.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, just looking at these 2 pages and thinking about the comics that you've read, where do you think this stands in terms of comic color? Does it hold water?
I think it holds water. I also think like it's also so much more detailed. It's something that the fact that there's only 2 pages makes sense to me that it's only 2 pages because this would just be super hard to do like for multiple times.
Yeah. Well, and telling a 2-page, so I did a 2-page story just to refresh everyone's memory. I did 2-page stories because it's more difficult to write, and I was trying to really kind of push my understanding of comic writing at the time. So these 2-page comics are hard to draw, hard to write, hard to color, but rewarding when you finish them.
I find the hardest 2 ways to write something is to write something super short or something super long. Because if it's super short, you have to somehow get everything in such a concise manner that it's very hard to do. And if it's too long, you have to add so much detail, you're never sure if it's accurate or correct.
Right. Like how do you keep people interested in the long form?
Like, so my big problem with Game of Thrones is each book's like 8,000 pages. At some point, I might forget what happened in page 1 when I'm at page 8,000.
Yeah. So cool. So that is the coloring update for this comic.
Cool.
If you're listening to this right now, I should have a write-up of this on our website, dumbcomiccreators.com, if you wanted to see screenshots or something like that.
You can also head over to the Patreon page, support 2 great emerging writers.
And podcasters.
And just being a fantastic people.
That's the best you can do. Just be fantastic people.
Well, I mean, that's a good rule in general. Just be a good person. I mean, like that's just a rule of thumb. Like, hey, people, be a good person.
It is a good rule. Yeah.
Do you disagree with that, Keegan? Do you have something against people being good?
No, I'm for it.
Okay,
I'm just saying.
I know this controversial time where it used to be everyone could say the Nazis were the bad guys. Not anymore, apparently.
Wow. No, I don't think that's true. I just think that the bad guys are willing to go outside, and the good guys are not. They're just staying home.
But in the long run, we'll live, and the bad guys will die. So.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
There you go.
That's how it should be.
Yep.
Did you read anything this week?
I did. I read a comic called Sex and Violence.
Cool. Let's talk about it.
So, Sex and Violence is by Jimmy Plati and Justin Gray. There's 2 separate stories in it. That's why they're 2 separate authors. And the artwork is by Jimmy Broxton and John Santa Cruz.
Okay.
I'm not going to show any images by it. Just 2 separate storylines. One is about a hitman who is using sex with a prostitute to be able to get the people that killed his son.
Okay.
And the other is about a police officer who becomes obsessed with her neighbors and gets to the point where she pretty much hunts someone down and ends up with the so her neighbor is getting abused by her boyfriend / husband.
Uh-huh.
And she becomes obsessed with the girl, like trying to protect her. And so it gets to the point where like she kind of hunts down and pretty much kills the bad guy and ends up with a girl.
Okay.
And there's gratuitous amounts of nudity. So that's why I'm not showing it.
Do you think it was worth having the gratuitous amounts of nudity?
No.
Or is it just literally just to kind of sell the guys who want to see nudity?
It's kind of like to sell guys to say the nudity. Like, honestly, having it didn't add to the story. I think it actually kind of like distracted me from it.
Okay.
And the artwork wasn't so great that I was like, oh, this is beautiful. This is so great. It was like,
All right. Yeah, so let's talk about the art then. Sounds like the story was...
The story wasn't that good. The art was solid in that the character and how any modern art or any modern comics art is solid. Not extraordinary, not something that stood out to me.
Okay.
The only reason like it's memorable is it's because of the boobs, honestly.
Oh, okay. uh, all right. So, and I'm not even gonna follow that up. It sounds like it was pretty standard Marvel style
Yeah,
comic. Yeah. Okay.
it's very standard Marvel style.
Okay. And what about the color?
Coloring for the most part was noir style. So there are a lot darker colors, darker shades.
Okay.
Um, blacks, a lot of reds.
Does it feed into the story at all?
Yeah, it fed into the storyline because all of them were kind of depressing stories. Because one's and it all takes place at night for the most part. So
Okay.
it feeds into the storyline. So that was I give it like a solid C or C plus. I give it a solid B because it's above or it's average, but not but above average in a good way or whatever. Is how I describe it.
I see. And the lettering?
Lettering standard Marvel, nothing special at all.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, what about the je ne sais quoi?
That's a French term.
It is.
Not really. They're really like the reason why I read it was because I bought it because it was on a super sale. It was for $1 because the one of the owners at the comic book store wasn't a big fan of it. It was just trying to get rid of them because he didn't like having having nudity on his comic book rack.
Yeah.
So like they were all physically you had to take like tape and cover up because even the cover has nudity on it, and so we were always taping it over, and we just kind of like I think he's like just get rid of it, just pretty much toss it in the dollar bin.
I see. Cool. Well, I'm gonna say that is a pretty solid overview on a scale between paper cuts on your feet as you walk across hundreds of miles of index cards and a giant free chocolate cake that you're allowed to just like jump on like it's a bouncing castle. What do you give this comic?
Paper cuts on your hands. It was not good.
Oh wow. All right. So that's pretty bad.
For all you listeners, I suffered for you for reading this.
What's the name of that comic again?
Sex and Violence.
Sex and Violence. All
it
right.
delivers sex and violence. It is what it is. It's just that it's not very good at either.
If you're into those two things combined.
Yeah, if you're into those two things combined, first of all, okay. Second of all, why? Third of all, just get it elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay. So I read something too. It's a quick comic. And you know, I want to talk about it because it is also got Jimmy Palmiotti involved. Wasn't he in the Sex and Violence?
Jimmy Palmiotti.
Yeah. What do you do in that?
He was one of the writers.
Oh, okay. So this one, the script is by Garth Ennis, pencils and lettering by Amanda Connor, inks by Jimmy Palmiotti, colors by Paul Mounts. And the book is called The Pro. Have you ever read this?
I have never read this one.
Okay. So The Pro is, from what I've gathered, kind of a cult comic.
Oh, I've seen this before. I've not read it though.
Okay. It's kind of a cult comic. It's about, and it sort of, I have to say, it did sort of subvert some of the comic tropes, especially of the 90s when it was made. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like about a prostitute who gets superpowers and has to join the Justice League, sort of, and like sort of the chaos she causes from that. And just like Sex and Violence, it has a lot of nudity and sexual situations.
A prostitute having sexual situations? I don't believe you.
Yeah, it does. So, but I will say that even though the prostitution is very generalized um, and it's very masochistic. Is that how you say that?
That's how you say it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean it's drawn by a woman. It's drawn in it's pencils and lettering by a woman. So some of this is at least approved by the uh,
So you're saying if you pay a woman money, she might do it?
by the jeez, by the other gender, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not approved. I don't know, but it does talk of. So the reason I liked it is it subverts sort of like what you might think this comic would be about. It's about her actual life. It does suck. She is poor. She is what quote unquote classless. And this alien like makes a bet that she won't like rise to the occasion, and that typical fish out of water type of story.
Mm-hmm.
Once she gets the powers, she's like kind of like pressured into joining the Justice League. And they're sort of they're not stereotypes, they're exaggerations of the actual Justice League, and they even look sort of like the Justice League in a way that should have gotten them sued. And like there's some like very would definitely
Oh,
get
wow.
cancel cultured
Yeah.
yeah, some of this stuff, but
Let me guess. Superman is beyond pure. That person is obviously Wonder Woman and Green Lantern.
yeah, there's a very strong like Dom situation going on with the Batman character. And Robin,
Yeah.
and this is the Robin character. So yeah, and if you're listening, the Robin character is like underneath the Batman's legs in this panel. It's just strange.
I mean, in the original or in a lot of the older Batmans, they used to sleep in the same bed. So.
Oh God. All right. So yeah, so it's definitely subverting some of that and just being very plain with those usual what's it called? Those usual
expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So she joins, and then she kind of corrupts them from within, and it ends. It ends. I mean, this comic is a one-off. There's nothing else that happens.
So how does it end then? If you mind spoiling.
I think she sacrifices herself in like the ultimate sacrifice. But it's all like been arranged by the alien, so it's kind of a tragic story. And I think they also have to like take care of her child. So anyway,
Okay,
it's sort of and all right, yeah. So let's talk about the art. The art is very early Image Comics, Marvel sort of. It's very interesting the way she draws like the differences between the superheroes and like the prostitute's home life. Like there's a lot more grunge to her than there is to the superheroes. But that's kind of like the only like standout part of the art. The rest of it's very cartoony.
Okay. The lettering?
The lettering is pretty standard. Again, nothing too out of the ordinary.
Okay.
Same with the colors.
Cool. Do the art and the art support the story, or did it kind of take away from it?
I thought it did support because it's not too exaggerated, and the story is very exaggerated. So the art actually grounds the story a lot and makes it like a little more believable, even though it's still pretty cartoony. But it makes you kind of believe that this could be like a Justice League comic, which is exactly what it needs to do because it's a satire, So that's a good thing.
All right. So now we need to talk about a French term. It's on the top of my head. The je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, the French term.
The French term.
Okay, so that is probably the writing, but I would say it's the satire of, and the reason I would say it's the satire, this comic book really deals with class divisions between like the rich people of the world and the poor people of the world, and it throws this prostitute into the realm of superheroes, commenting on them being sort of like the elite of the world and her kind of corrupting them and like compromising their morals, or did they have any to begin with? And they've obviously never done anything to solve her issues before, even if they're like solving the, like saving the world every day. They're not keeping her off the street, you know? So
Yeah.
She goes back and she kills this guy who's like taking advantage of prostitutes or killing them, I think. And they get all shocked when she does that. And yeah, and there's some other stuff I'm not going to mention on the podcast, but that's kind of like the major gist of it, is like this alien thinks that she's no good because she does this job that she does to like basically survive. Yeah. And, you know, and essentially like she calls them on their shit, you know?
Okay. So
yeah.
Overall, if you had to rate this between getting stabbed with a rusty spoon that's not sharp, just kind of pokes you and it feels weird and it's kind of scratchy, to getting a beautiful bouquet of flowers every single morning that smells fresh and actually acts as a cologne every single time you pick it up in the morning, so you always smell fresh and great. What would you rate this?
I would say this is like a bar of soap.
It gets the job done. Not anything special, but you kind of need it.
It's neutral. Yeah, it's neutral.
Yeah.
I think it's more like a historical document, or like something to like kind of like look at, because
a footnote in history.
It's not breaking any ground today on any of these themes or anything. But from what I've read, it did at the time kind of like subvert a lot of what was going on at DC and Marvel. And the character is a pretty strong woman. You know, I'll point that out. So it's good, but it's not good. It's not great. And it's good that it's a one-off, because if it was more than a one-off, it would have been problematic, I think.
I could see that. All right.
But it's a good one-off, yeah.
Good one-off. So, for those that are listening, that we're kind of starting to wrap up, make sure you check out our Patreon page or our website, Dumb Comic Creators. My name is Eric Schwartz, and I'm joined by
I was interrupting you, so I was...
Oh, okay. So I was interrupted so rudely, and I demand an apology.
And I'm Keegan Shiner, is what I was going to say. I was going to say I'm Keegan Shiner, but you were going to say, and I'm joined by.
And I am joined by.
More like you were joined by, right?
I am in the state of. I am in the state of being joined by.
We need a catchphrase.
We need a catchphrase.
I'm going to edit it right from right now. This is the beginning of our podcast.
Beginning of the podcast. Oh, man, we really need a guest, too, then. All right. See ya.
See ya.